breathe. Just breathe. Before you go any further, before you get down into that comment section, breathe. I know, right? Not a good day. Terrible day. Disgraceful day for some. But just, I've seen some of the reaction online already, and I just know for a fact the comment section is going to stay the same. We're not a team 11 points behind, right? And that's not me excusing. I know it. Oh, that's everybody going down now. Oh, you excusing that performance today? Or you're just backing up your buddy Rodgers? No. No. But just chill, right? Just chill. It's been a great season. Today was a disaster. It can be both. You know, it doesn't have to be one or the other. You know, it doesn't have to be a case of you come out and you react like it's the end of the world. It also doesn't have to be the case you come out and pretend nothing happened. It's just chill. Rangers 3, Celtic 0. Let's talk about that. I do not want to make this video in the slightest. And it's embarrassing that I have to say that. And it's not because Celtic got beat. I have done this now this is my 10th year on YouTube, right? 10th year. I know, time's flew in. And by the way, in those 10 years, we've won the league 9 out of 10. So just calm for a moment, right? It's not because Celtic lost today I don't want to make this video. I've watched Celtic lose to Rangers before. I've made videos on Celtic losing to Rangers before. I intend on doing this for as long as I possibly can. I'm going to see Celtic lose to Rangers a hell of a lot in this lifetime, right? It's going to happen because I am a realistic and straight thinking Celtic fan who knows that there's your up and downs in football. You have your days when you're off it and the days it just doesn't go to plan. I'm going to have to talk about it a lot. That's not the reason I don't want to make this video. Rangers went out there today with a much better team. They got what they deserved. They won the match. Celtic were terrible. I can talk about that, right? I'm not a baby. Why I can't be bothered making this video is because of the reaction that has followed ever since. I cannot believe some of the stuff that I'm reading. I genuinely cannot believe it. Only 3 days ago was I making videos talking about how in 2024 we had lost 2 games in all competitions. We had had our best start to a season in Europe in my lifetime. How we had won the League Cup, the first trophy of the season available to us. And now suddenly it's disaster. Everybody wants Ange back. Rodgers has lost it. It's a total catastrophe. We're 11 points clear at the top of the league. Rangers have beaten us. And no, it doesn't absolve anybody of blame for today. It doesn't make it okay. It was a disastrous performance, a stinking performance, one that I'm quite frankly embarrassed about, if anything. But I think that we all just need to take a minute to breathe, to chill, to just collect ourselves after losing. I know it's a feeling we're not used to, especially losing to Rangers. I mean, Brendan Rodgers has only lost to Rangers once prior to today. That's only his second defeat to Rangers in his career. I know we're not used to this feeling. I know that. But all I ask of you before I even start talking about this game is just to breathe, chill out a wee bit, and we'll move past it. I don't like losing to them. I don't. I hate it as much as the next Celtic fan. It quite frankly ruins my day. But I don't let it. I don't make it the catalyst to rip up the notebook and start again. You know, this season has been fantastic, and I think a lot of people had it in their heads that this was going to be another invincible season, another invincible campaign. People kept asking me week in, week out. I'm saying it's far too early for that. You know, we've still got to play Rangers another 3 times. And they had so much to play for today. So much. I mean, the guy that's in charge of them, Philippe Clement, he was arguably fighting for his job this afternoon, and they played for him, and they got the result. Celtic didn't turn up. We were shambolic, and I think that the manager and the players are both just as culpable for that. Rodgers set out with a terrible game plan. He didn't make changes when he should have made changes, and we suffered because of it. The players, they couldn't pass the ball 5 yards. They didn't create chances, and both of them have to share blame for that. You know, Rodgers was the one that put out the team, who made the decisions. The players are the ones who've got to execute it. And I don't think if Brendan Rodgers put any plan forward today, those players would have executed it. They looked terrible. They looked miles off it. In fact, I would go as far to say, and maybe excluding a couple of the European hidings that we've taken, domestically anyway, you're arguably looking at the worst performance from a Brendan Rodgers side ever. And his first spell here, his second spell here, I think that could be the worst performance ever. in a domestic game of football anyway. I can't remember one much worse. I know Hearts beat us 4-0. That was pretty terrible that day. We obviously lost to Rangers before at Ibrox in Rodgers' first tenure. We were pretty poor that day. But this is the first time where I can remember us being systematically and tactically outclassed. And what makes it worse is it was systematically and tactically outclassed by a Rangers side that was scraping the bottom of the barrel. They had a makeshift back four. They had their goalkeeper out through injury. It was a Rangers team that looked really, really weak and there for the taking. It's a Rangers team that ultimately going into today was 14 points behind Celtic. So all general common sense would dictate that Celtic should have had their way with Rangers this afternoon, and that didn't happen. And that's probably why the reaction is as severe as it is, because we all had it in our heads that Celtic were going to go out and wipe the floor with Rangers this afternoon. I'd done a pre-match live stream, and I had our own supporters saying it was going to be 7-0, it was going to be 7-1. I think I seen somebody go as high as 8. People were generally hitting the 4 or 5-0 mark for most of the predictions. And I said, look, listen, yeah, it could be an absolute hiding today, but equally, Rangers have got something to play for, and they outplayed us. It's as simple as that. And Brendan Rodgers does need to hold his hands up for that. I think that he does hold the majority of the blame today. He totally lost his way within the game. I think at half time it was evident that big changes had to be made. He didn't make those big changes. It was just ultimately a game in which he will feel the wrath of the supporters, it feels like, for the decisions that he made, and maybe the way he spoke going into the game as well. But it's just a bit much. Just a bit much. A big part of the problem seems to be the reaction following on from the final as well. Suddenly we have abandoned all of the positivity from winning the League Cup and doing it in the fashion that we did, to then bring it up as the problem for today, that we didn't learn from the Cup final going into today's performance. And I can certainly agree with aspects of that. You can see that they maybe applied some of the things that hurt us from the Cup final into today's performance, and Celtic and Brendan Rodgers didn't learn from that. But remember, it's a Cup final where Rangers are obviously going to be up for it and obviously want to win a trophy of some form. They knew the league was probably gone, so they had to try and win it. Today, we're at Ibrox, 50,000 Rangers fans, not a Celtic fan in the building. Rangers are entitled to have a go at it, and we didn't have the answer to it. They bullied our players. The players didn't stand up to it. The manager didn't have the answers to the questions that were asked of him. It was just a poor day at the office. And there's no amount of excuses that can cover up the performance today. It's got to be spoke about. It's got to be analysed, and there has to be a good response now from Celtic. And hopefully there will be. I remember when we got beat off 7-0 from Dortmund, there was a fantastic response from Celtic. We went on a great run after that, if you remember rightly. We played some fantastic football following the 7-0 game at Dortmund. So we need that again. I think we just need to bring some reassurance back that might be missing. But we've just won 4-0 back-to-back. 2 games, 4-0. Good performances as well, especially in the game against Motherwell. Look, today was... There's no apologies that will make it feel better. There is no excuses that will make it feel better. We were, pardon my French, everybody, shite. Absolutely shite. And we'll be feeling the effects of it for a while. Simply said. God, I don't even know where to begin now. I mean, from a footballing point of view, we could be here all day discussing the game. I think we've got to touch on the manager's wrongs from today. We've also got to touch on the players' wrongs from today. There was some players whose performances out there were enough for me to say their Celtic career's done. That's how bad some players were today. And actually, when you boil it down to if you want to just boil it down to the basics here, I don't think there was a player on the park who was good today. The closest for me was Cameron Carter-Vickers. I think he was the closest player to getting pass marks, because I think in the first half especially, he saved us from a good few moments of fear. And he was the only one that kind of stood up to Rangers on a couple of occasions. But generally, if I was to boil it down to the basic sentiment of what my opinion was of the football on the park today, it was that every single player wasn't good enough. It was totally embarrassing. The first half performance, was it worse than the second half's? Probably not. They were both just as bad. Celtic kind of came out in the second half with a little bit of fire in their belly, with a little bit of something. We actually scored a goal that was offside. It looked as though we turned a corner a wee bit, but then it all fell down the pan around 65 minutes. All kind of just went all gone. But the first half was one of the worst 45 minutes of football I've ever seen as a Celtic fan. And yeah, I think both parties share a responsibility. Brendan Rodgers, side to side, not ambitious enough for the ball moving forward. But then again, when we did try and move the ball forward, Liam Scales ends up passing it to Rangers players, or Rio Hatate ends up passing it to Rangers players. So this is what I mean. You know, I fully put blame in it, and people are just going to take this out of context from me. They're going to, because everybody knows how big a Rodgers fan I am, and I'm always going to defend him. He's the Celtic manager. Just let me remind you, by the way, this is the Celtic manager we're talking about. He's got my backing. He's the manager of my football club, and he's done a fucking grand job at it. But I will criticise him when I need to criticise him. Brendan Rodgers will criticise himself when he needs to criticise himself. I just don't get too carried away with it all. I don't need to be sitting saying that he should be gone or creating pointless headlines. But, you know, Rio Hatate and Liam Scales or whoever else it was a few of them doing it today, and especially in the first half, just passing it straight to Rangers. And I'm like, you know, well, the manager's not telling them to do that. and like, that's what I'm saying. So maybe, you know, Rodgers has to change something, and he doesn't. But the players need to pick themselves up and play better. And both parties are just equally responsible for the shite that we had to endure this afternoon. I think that everybody needs to hold their head up in the mirror and look at themselves and go, what was that? Because it was pathetic. The way that we give away the first goal, the nature of how the first goal is given away, is Liam Scales at his absolute worst. And going into today, if you were there for my pre-match live stream, I said that I thought Scales deserved the game today. I'm not going to change my mind or anything here or say that he shouldn't have played, because I really did believe that Liam Scales deserved to start the game today. He's played really well recently. He's came in with that battle with Austin Trusty, where Austin Trusty looked as though he was getting the better of him, and he's done well enough to deserve a spot today. And then that's the kind of reminder that makes you sit there and go, this is why we spent £6 million on Trusty. Now, do I think that Trusty would have fixed what happened today? No, I don't. I don't think it would have been as simple as that. But Liam Scales should have been off the park at half-time. There's no two ways about it. He should have been off. Did Scales finish the game? He was on the park longer than he should have been anyway. I can't remember if he played start to finish. That was a terrible decision from the manager to keep him on the park past half-time. One of the worst performances you'll see defensively and from playing the ball out at the back. He brought nothing to the game today, Scales. And I don't mean to be he's not the only one. This isn't going to be me targeting Liam Scales for a video. But a terrible performance from both points of view of what he needs to do in a Celtic team. And to the left of him, Greg Taylor, defensively, I thought he was poor. I thought going forward, Taylor wasn't too bad. He looked cool on the ball. He looked a lot more comfortable than some other players. But defensively, the constant backing off of his man, I think sometimes he actually left Scales with a lot to do. I think there's one or two occasions in the first half where, because of Taylor backing off and the man getting round him, Scales was left in no man's land. I think Taylor needs to learn how to be a bit more assertive in his defending. You know, and it's been a problem. I've spoke about it so many times. So many times have I came out of European games and I've talked about Taylor constantly backing off his man. And he done that a lot today against the likes of Hadji. Hadji scored a cracker today. Fair play to him. Scored an absolute world day of a goal. But he's not the world's fastest player, and he's not even the world's greatest player. He's okay. He's bang average. And Taylor is making him look like he's unbelievable, I think, by just backing off him, giving him so much respect. Put the pressure on these guys. Johnson, I thought, had a very poor game. Maybe that's just because he's back out of the cold from injury and missing a couple of games. He looked very, very poor. And defensively, we just couldn't put up with the aggression that Rangers were putting on to us. And Brendan Rodgers didn't have the answer for that. And I think one of the problems was the fact that he left Scales in the park so long. To be quite honest, Scales shouldn't have been on the park in the second half. We made our own problems constantly through poor decisions on the pitch and poor decisions off the pitch. And that made its way into the midfield. I think that in the first half performance, the only players that I couldn't really dig down on here would be the front three, because there was no service for them at all. This is what I mean. When it got into the midfield, the same things were happening. McGregor was trying. He was huffing and puffing. It just wasn't working for him. Hatate had one of his worst games as a Celtic player. He's getting increasingly more frustrating for me, Rio Hatate. I back him so much, and I know how much of a talent there is in there, but he does get increasingly frustrating when it comes to these games, and we talk about Hatate on his day. Doesn't feel like we're getting his day very often at the minute, and today it was, once again, should have been off the park at half time. I know Arne Engels is suffering through illness, and a lot of people seem to be picking up on that with Rodgers not bringing him on. I don't know if the illness was the reason, but even bring on McCowan at half time. Bring on any of them. Doesn't need to be Engels. If Engels is no well, cool. Bring on McCowan. Bring some assertiveness onto the park. Is assertiveness a word? I don't even think it is. I made that up there. But bring somebody who is more assertive onto the park and like McCowan, because Hatate, all his assertive play was going nowhere. It was going right into the Rangers' feet. Every time, every pass, every run. It was shocking. And Bernardo just couldn't get going. His engine didn't seem there. He was once again kind of like McGregor, huffing and puffing and trying, but just wasn't happening for him. And I think from the poor play from out the back in the defence really kept its way into the midfield, and I just don't think there was confidence building in the Celtic team at all. Really disjointed, really poor, but that's what the manager had to change. He had to change something, and whether that's... Brendan Rodgers is a very stubborn manager. When he thinks he's right, he wants to be right, and he wants to show he's right. And that might be the downfall of him sometimes. But it's very rare, like, you know, some people will go, well, he should have maybe brought on such and such, put two up front. He doesn't really want to change that shape, and understand that when you stand by a shape that the team are familiar with, you want to keep that familiarity in there. But he had to change something, and he didn't. He stood idly by and just kind of let it all happen. And he'll learn from that, I hope. People are saying, oh, he needs to learn from that, and he will. And I don't know why people will doubt it. This is what I mean. So I'll come back to the point. People going on about, oh, the free each game, he learned nothing from that. And I'm like, this is the guy who's won every trophy bar one available to him since he's been in Scotland. This is the guy that lost 2 games all of 2024. This is the guy who's only lost 1 game domestically this season. Of course he will learn from it. He's not fluked his way into the position he's in. He's a top-class manager. So you've got to put the faith in him there instead of, you know, coming out and wishing him gone. You know, it's a horrible day. First half was terrible. Rodgers didn't do right, and the players didn't do right. And sadly, that just didn't change going into the second half. As I said, we showed signs of a team that were looking a little bit better at the start of the second half. Kyogo obviously had the disallowed goal, and we played a wee bit more forward, but once it hit the kind of 65th minute, it just went back to more of the same from the first, and I think Rodgers took too long with his changes. We were stagnant. And it was just a poor day. The other 2 goals we conceded, it just Celtic. Everything was so uncharacteristically done today. You know, even the manner of how we conceded all the goals, didn't feel like I was watching the Celtic I've been used to this year, and I don't know what that was. I don't know if we're still hungover for New Year's Eve or something. It was just really, really poor. And so disappointing. You know, as I said, there is no excuses for how poorly we played today, especially against a Rangers side who were so depleted. I will give them their credit, and I know there were plenty of Rangers fans who come on to watch this video to see what I'm saying about the game tonight. Rangers played out their skin. They deserved their 3 points. I couldn't take that away from them. You know, it's not just because Celtic were shite today. They played out their skin. The stats will show you that. And Celtic didn't have the answers to the questions. It's a bit, and now this is where I try and flip it to be positive, and so many people will just refuse to be positive. That's on you. You know, I can't. I know I'm sitting here saying just stay calm, take a breather. We're still 11 points clear. For some people, they will just stubbornly not choose to look at any positives or look at any sort of way forward from this. This is the end all be all for some people. This is unmitigated disaster, and if you've chose that as your mindset, I can't fix that. It shouldn't be, but it might be. If that is your view of where we go from here is unmitigated disaster, all I'll say is this: treat the team and the manager with the same energy when we win a treble in May. Because we're going to do it. This will give Brendan Rodgers the rocket up his arse that always sends him to the next big thing. And the next point proven. When we go through to the playoff round of the Champions League, you know, treat him and the team with the same energy. If this is unmitigated disaster from you, keep it as unmitigated disaster, is all I'll say. But I've lost the point of what I was... okay, so what I'm trying to look from it is this. It hopefully weeds out what needs to be changed, what needs to be fixed. There is still work to be done for us to achieve the optimum version of Brendan Rodgers Celtic. There is still signings to be made. Hey, listen, it keeps Philippe Clement in a job for another few weeks, maybe a few months. There's a positive, I suppose. But I'm not even want to be that bitter Celtic fan for a minute. I want to talk about Celtic. I don't necessarily care. I'm just trying to help you here get through this rut if you're in one. But the optimistic thing for me is, and the thing that I'm trying to use to carry myself forward from a terrible result today is, hopefully it opens the eyes to the manager on the board, right? There are players here who are lacking the sufficient amount of quality needed to be part of this team, that we need to sign up in this window. That, you know, if we're getting manhandled off a Rangers side who is playing a second fiddle defence, how are we going to progress in Europe? How are we going to progress to the next level of where Brendan Rodgers wants Celtic to be? We are still a good bit off of it. We are moving in the right direction, and today will not change my mind on that. We are moving in the right direction, 100%. And if you don't think so, I urge you to rethink, but there is still work to be done. And hopefully today, that is what pushes Celtic on to do that correct work. Not only just in this January window, that's a lot to ask for, but here in the next window. You know, get as much as we can done in January, go and win a treble, and get the rest of the work done in the summer. That's what I want. I feel like I've not even got to scratch the surface about the football played itself. And I will try and get round to that over the next couple of days. I'm sure we'll be talking about this game a lot. This is going to stay in a lot of people's seasons and leave a few bitter tastes in the mouth for a fair amount of us. But we'll get there. We'll get there. Anyway, like and subscribe. Chill in the comments. Take it easy, right? Take it easy. See y'all next time.